rates have gone up a little bit, so we'll begin seeing a little better rates than what we've been used to over the past 2 years.
Be good. Thank you. And our legislative report from Mrs. Dixon.
Thank you, Mrs. Metzler. Good evening, everyone. Okay, I have quite a bit to report. First, from the Ohio Board of Education. The Ohio Department of Education debuted last week the first payment to school districts and other educational entities under the new school funding formula. It was enacted last June through House Bill 110. The payments accessible through school finance payment reports display information on each funding elements of the new funding formula with all the relevant data elements and calculation parameters for each individual educational entity. Updates to the FFPR are expected and questions can be submitted to school funding at education.ohio.gov. Secondly, from the ODE, they released updated criteria for the third grade reading guarantee. They announced a new communication feature to pull all the proposed rules that are open to public comment in one place on ODE's website. And on to the legislation. Senate Bill 1, a revised code relating to teaching financial literacy in high school to provide discretion regarding educational requirements of substitute teachers, excuse me, for the 2021-2022 school year and to declare an emergency. Senate Bill 37, to make changes to education law for 2020 and 2021 school year in response to implications from COVID-19 and to declare an emergency as introduced by the Senate. Revised code to prohibit certain mandatory vaccinations and other activities related to an individual's vaccination status and to make an appropriation related to coronavirus local fiscal recovery as passed by the House. Senate Bill 145, to revise the state report card system. The explanation of this was quite lengthy. If you have any questions on it, I can certainly give you the rest of the information. Senate Bill 155, to prohibit the use of seclusion in public schools. Seclusion used in this case is defined as privacy of students, that there's no expectation of privacy within their belongings that are within the school. To reform the functions and responsibilities of the State Board of Education, the Superintendent of Public Instruction, and the Department of Education as introduced by the Senate. Senate Bill 181, regarding student religious expression in interscholastic athletics and extracurricular activities, as reported by the House Primary and Secondary Education Committees. Senate Bill 200, to permit students who were enrolled in the 12th grade during the 2020-2021 school year to re-enroll in that grade in the 2021-2022 school year and to declare an emergency as introduced by the Senate. Couple more regarding blended or remote learning. The models for the 2021-2022 school year, the state report card, emergency management plans, withdrawal of untested students from internet or computer-based school plans, withdrawal of untested students from internet or computer-based schools, and the third grade reading guarantee, the school financial literacy instruction, and the educational choice Cleveland scholarship payments. This is as enrolled by the state Senate. The revised code to allow the Board of Education employees to use accrued sick leave for parental leave of absence as introduced by the Senate. The code to allow a person under 16 years of age to be employed after 7 p.m. during the school year as introduced by the Senate. The code authorizing the merger of one or more community schools and a nonprofit operator into community social network as introduced by the Senate. Last one, the revised code to require rather than permit school districts to provide a moment of silence each school day as introduced in the Senate. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Dixon. The ATEC report from Ms. Fisher.
Due to the Martin Luther King holiday on Monday, we did not have an ATEC report or a meeting on Monday. It will be next Monday coming up.
Okay.
So at this point, I have nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the report of the superintendent.
Thank you. So each January, as stated on the agenda, we join with the Ohio School Boards Association to celebrate and recognize our local boards of education, of citizens who serve children and represent their communities. Individual school board members face complex and demanding challenges. Their love of learning and concern and caring for students, staff, and the community drive school board members' desire to lead so students can achieve. It is my pleasure to recognize our school board members and to thank them for their service to our district. Mr. Richard Arndt with 6.5 years of service, Ms. Sarah Fisher with 6 years of service, Mrs. Amber Metzler with 2 years of service, Mrs. Marti Milliken Dixon beginning her first year as a member of the board, and Mrs. Jamie Ortiz with 4 years of service. I also have a proclamation from the governor and lieutenant governor to read that was sent to all Ohio school districts. Whereas more than 700 boards of education oversee and manage the personnel and properties of school districts throughout Ohio. And whereas school board members are elected to establish the policies that provide the framework for their schools, school board members devote hours of their time each week to provide leadership to their local schools. They fill an important role with members creating and monitoring district plans to make sure students have the tools and skills to reach their full potential. School boards maintain communications with all segments of their communities to keep the public informed of district activities, and school board members advocate for the best interest of the students served in their districts. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, Ohio school boards have played an important role in providing safe, ongoing instruction to students. And it is important that communities support school boards so that students receive the best education and are prepared to be the leaders of tomorrow. And now, therefore, we, Mike DeWine and John Husted, Governor and Lieutenant Governor of the state of Ohio, do hereby recognize January as School Board Recognition Month. And I have certificates as well from the Ohio School Boards Association that I will present after the meeting to these school board members. So I certainly thank all of you for what you do as well, and certainly it benefits the students and staff and community.
Thank you.
Next, our administrators will provide a brief report, and we will start with Mrs. Berzanko from
Good evening.
Osterberg.
Good evening. To support one of our Osberg families and the soldiers deployed to Qatar with one of their family members, teachers in grades 2, 4, and 5 had their students write letters of encouragement to the soldiers. And last week, each class received a thank you letter from the Army and a certificate from the soldiers expressing their gratitude for the letters. And I made you a copy of the ones that came to Mrs. Hollis so you can see what they were sent. Teachers made a big deal with the students that they did get a letter back from the Army. So that was very nice. This activity supported our building communications and writing goals, along with sustaining positive partnerships within our community. Next, Mrs. Buchanan, she's a preschool parent, dropped off much needed supplies to the school last week, and these supplies were donated by ASA's Angels of Hope. You might know her as Asa Cox, Century 21. This is a 503B that she has started, and they dropped off a lot of good things for us. And I would like to thank them for their generous donation. The students were so excited to receive new supplies, and they are already using them in the classrooms. Next, I would like to congratulate Kenna Britton for representing Osterberg at the spelling bee. She did a wonderful job, and we are so proud of her. Congratulations also goes out to Leah McMichael, as she was the winner of the spelling bee and a prior Osterberg student. Lastly, the teachers are giving out semester writing assignments with the graphic organizer to collect data on how long students can write independently. And reviewing the writing portion of the past third grade Ohio State test, the reading component, we have found that 50% of the students were not passing the writing portion of that test. They're still getting good scores, but the writing they are not passing. To help with this situation, K-3 writing goals were developed, and the students are working toward these indicators by the end of the school year. Our building level teams we'll be reviewing the data collected and plan for the next phase of collection and instruction. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mrs. Doherty from Cork.
Good evening. Thank you very much. At Cork, again, I think we're all going to mention the spelling bee, so thank you. For Cork Elementary, we had Alex Lassoff. He represented Cork and he persevered through 6 rounds of spelling. And way to go, Alex. He enjoyed it. He was calm, cool, and collected. So we do really appreciate him representing us, but it is good to know he did enjoy that experience. For our community goals, speaking of 5th grade, our 5th grade will be designing and building a snowman for the 2022 Geneva Winterfest Snowman Designing Contest. What will they create? You need to visit downtown and see what we come up with. So our 5th grade class will be doing that. And from our classrooms, thank you to our PTO. We were able to freshen up the library. They donated $500. The students have really been asking for books to read. They like certain series, and we do like to hook them into reading by getting them connected with the series that they're interested in. And so Mrs. Dempsey, our librarian, did do a survey with them and passed that on to PTO. We also did a drive asking parents if they had any at home that they wanted to donate, because a lot of parents like to donate. So we thank them as well. So the students are really excited because they were listened to and we did get books for them. They're very excited about that. Kindergarten will be participating in an igloo STEM project. The students will be challenged to estimate how many mini marshmallows they're going to be estimating, they're going to be predicting, and then they're going to be comparing. And when finished, students will determine how many marshmallows were actually used. And they love cleaning up the project by eating those marshmallows after they're done. So, and then after learning about Martin Luther King Jr., students in Mrs. Bordeaux's class will create timelines to share important events. So they're learning about history, and it's a meaningful and fun activity. And then she is also going to have fun activity in which Mrs. Bordeaux and the class learned so much about one another. So there's our social emotional portion too, where they're listened to and they can share. And one year, Mrs. Bordeaux shared that she learned that a student vacationed where a movie was filmed, and all the students were very enthralled with that. In addition, students are continuing to learn about fractions, and they did some hands-on activities comparing fractions, of course, using measuring cups, other hands-on materials. And it is just a great way to give them a more concrete idea of the concept that they are learning. So thank you to our teachers for sharing that.
Thank you. From GPS, Ms. Guston will present next.
Good evening, everyone. Tomorrow we wrap up the first semester or the second quarter. So we're at the mid-year point of the year. At GPS, we're always working on improving our positive behavior intervention and support program. It helps with our school culture. So we did have a staff meeting last Monday. We focused on minor student infractions and major student infractions. The minor ones are dealt with in the classroom with the teacher providing interventions, and the major ones are referred to me in the office. So we looked at the difference between those. We did come up with a minor student infraction sheet that was introduced for teachers to use to track when these are occurring, these type of behaviors, and what type of interventions to put in place. We also did, thanks to Mr. McCoy and Mr. Weatherholt in the high school, they did provide us with their major student infraction Google form, where the teacher will go in and submit this information electronically, because Mr. Burgard did put that on all their teacher computers. And then that is shared with me in the office. And then from there, I can go in, see the referral, do my own background check there with the student, meet with them, and provide another layer of intervention. And that is all tracked, because that's part of PBIS. We track interventions, we see what works, we see when these behaviors are occurring, and then we provide supports to make sure that we lessen these behaviors. And that's one of the building goals as well at GPS this year, along with improving our English language arts scores. So we also did continue to work on finalizing our writing rubrics and checklists at multiple grade levels. We did have our second out of 3 lockdown drills for the year last Friday. We had one originally scheduled for January 7th, but we had a snow day, so that was rescheduled for the 14th. Our building leadership team also met as well last week to look at the third grade scores that we got back from the October testing administration as well, and to look at the rubrics that were developed by the teachers. We had a busy week last week. And then we also did talk about extended learning, and we're going to focus on grade 3 only for English language arts once the mask mandate is lifted. Typically, prior to that, we did multiple grade levels, but I've had a decline in interest in teachers wanting to stay after school at this point in time. So we're going to focus on third grade once the mandate's lifted. Also, continuing on with the theme of spelling bee, congratulations to fourth grader Gianna Altz. She represented GPS last week. She made it to the 7th round out of 9. So that is excellent. Congratulations to her. Also, at the last board meeting, it was brought up about how we've kind of reconfigured our building this year. So Mrs. Porcello did join us. She is using my former office conference room. I wanted to point out that it hasn't been used in 2 years due to COVID. Last year, we did not have any in-person meetings. We did everything Zoom, and we used the library last year because we did not have our librarians back yet. And that provided a space where everyone could distance. This year, we chose the music room because our meetings are held on Tuesdays, and that way parents had an option of Zoom or in person. But as of this week, all our meetings are, based on the matrix, are Zoom. Mrs. Purcell's office did serve last year as the COVID room. This year we do use the clinic. We run the air purifier. We have a partition curtain that we can use to distance students. Healthy students are quickly treated outside of the clinic area when an ill student is present. OT and PTs always used any open available space that we had, and this is not a change from the past. The elementary principals, along with Mr. Riley, he did join us last week. We did do some Zoom interviews with some of our non-degree substitutes. And now the substitutes that we did interview are required to obtain a drug screen, background check, apply for a temporary substitute license from ODE, and submit their high school transcript. So there has been some movement on that as we look to fill our classrooms each day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Riley from the middle school.
All right, good evening, everyone. So one of the goals at the middle school this year is to continue to engage parents into the middle school setting. So with that in mind, we had our third parent booster meeting just last week, and we had several parents that attended, and Jessica George showed up as our school counselor, and she talked quite a bit about the Source store that was a part of the PBIS program that they had a few years ago. So maybe talking to some families about bringing that back into our building. They also were very excited. They want to bring in a scholastic book fair to the middle school, which is the first time, I believe, ever that they'll be able to do that. So they've scheduled that for February 14th through the 17th. One of the nights will coincide with our parent-teacher conferences. So they're hopeful that we'll get some more families in there to the middle school to get some books into our students' hands, and maybe get some classroom sets of some ideas and some thoughts for the teachers as well. PD is somewhat limited here in the district this year, so we've made it a point, whether it be in weekly staff bulletins that go out to our teachers, or as a part of our staff meetings, to kind of have some type of PD that is associated with a topic that is going around. So in December, Mark and I facilitated a meeting with our staff on the OTES 2.0 rubric. We divided our staff into 3 groupings, and they went through 2 activities. One activity was dealing with kind of highlighting the differences between the skilled and the accomplished categories in 3 of the sections. And then they also went through what we kind of call the look for document that really identified some types of evidence that they could submit for their evaluation purposes. And we constructed the group so that it wasn't just all the English teachers together or all the math teachers together. We split them up, we mixed them all up with the hope that maybe when an English teacher was talking, that may trigger an idea for a math teacher or a music teacher. And we got some very good feedback from that, so much so that our superintendent has asked that Mark and I replicate this for the district at our PD meeting coming up this week. So we're kind of looking forward to that and seeing how that goes. Included I'll kind of go over the district spelling bee just a little bit. I know that's been the theme, but I won't go over too much. Just appreciation that are listed in your agenda of who not only was the pronouncer, this Mr. Lillie, but also our 3 judges that were there did a fantastic job. I did include a copy of the program in your report so you can kind of see all the students that participated. Again, congratulations is also extended out to Leah McMichael, a former Austinburg student, as we have said. Yes, there we go. And she will be competing at the county spelling bee that's going to be held on February 3rd. The winning word was ensnarement. And she did not pause at all when she went through and spelled that word, which was the championship word. And she stood up on stage and did a great job all the way throughout. I have included our enrollment projection numbers or enrollment numbers as we usually do. Some upcoming events, obviously the second graded quarter ends and parent-teacher conferences are coming up there in February. One thing that is not on the board report that we found out about this morning was that our 8th grade boys basketball team won the CVC championship this past weekend before all the snow hit. We believe they finished with a 17-1 record, which is phenomenal. So we are sporting that trophy in the main office for all who come in to kind of admire that along the way. Just from a student acknowledgement standpoint this week, I always like to try to recognize some students. I'm not going to read all their names off, but I've listed all of the contestants and all the alternates for the spelling bee. These students had to prepare over winter break, which in and of itself is a daunting task, but then with all the holiday hustle and bustle, but they did a great job all the way throughout. And then acknowledge Jessica George, our school counselor, staying for PTA or the parent booster meetings that we're having. The students are coming in and out of her office, and she's working on them on so many activities, dealing with not only academics, but also the social emotional learning component. So just kudos to her and all that she does for our middle school staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Weatherholt for the high school.
First, I would like to thank Vince Rome, Bill Plecha, and Jarrett Bergard. I know that a couple of those guys worked at least 20 hours yesterday to make sure that the high school could get open today. So I wanted to give a shout out to them and thank them very much. I think they finished up between 12:30 and 1 o'clock last night, finally getting the high school open and all the doors cleared so we can have a safe environment for our students today. So thank you guys. And the first thing I want to talk about, if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, the very top one, that is our DD unit and our cheerleaders performing at the reindeer games before Christmas break. They are planning on doing a basketball game also, but I think it's such a wonderful thing to see all our students engaging with each other and supporting one another, no matter what level they are. And it's just a wonderful experience because we're just one big family supporting one another through this process. So thank you to the cheerleaders and the DD units for that performance. I'd like to thank Mr. Sorber for all he's done for the Geneva football program during his time as our head coach. He has developed a program that has seen our first win in a state football playoffs, and he has several players that have went on to play at the collegiate level. However, more importantly than just the football game or anything of that nature, is that he has over the years helped develop young men, good young men for our community. So I wanted to thank him. So thank you to Mr. Sorber for his service. With board approval, and I clearly put with board approval, I'd like to welcome our new head coach, Don Chimsky, to the program. He's a graduate of Geneva in 2000. He's been he was the center of the football team when he played in high school. He has been with the district for 18 years, and he has coached for 16 of those years. I wish him the best of luck, and I hope to watch him continue to help Geneva develop good young men as we move forward. Every year, the VFW sponsors a Voice of Democracy audio essay program that provides high school students with the unique opportunity to express themselves in regards to a democratic and patriotic theme recorded essay. More than 64,500 students from across the country enter a chance to win over $2 million in educational scholarships and incentives awards through the program. This year's prompt was America, where do we go from here? Congratulations to GHS ninth grader Sophia Galliazzo, who won first place, and senior Grace Moon, who won second place. Both were selected to represent VFW Post 6846 for their speeches. Congratulations, ladies. I would also like to welcome Jefferson, Kanya, and Madison into the CVC. They were offered an invitation today and they all three accepted. They will begin competing with us in the year 23-24 school year. So congratulations to them. There's been a lot of talk about the league and competing and traveling and all that. So as of now, Edgewood, Ashtabula Lakeside, Geneva, Kanya, Jefferson, Grand Valley are now all in the NEC or all in the CVC. It reminds me of the old NEC, and we're starting to compete against local schools again. Congratulations to them.
Thank you. Next, our Director of Student Services, Mrs. Porcello.
Hello. I don't ever have a lot of exciting stuff to talk about because I don't have a lot of students that I get to visit. But behind the scenes in the special ed department, this month I have submitted for approval the federal quota registration for blind students. And this is in conjunction with the Federal Act to Promote the Education of the Blind that was enacted in 1879. And the quota provides textbooks and instructional materials, monies to purchase those for students that are blind. In order to be eligible, a student must meet two different criteria. They need to meet the definition of blindness or function at the definition of blindness and be enrolled in a public or private nonprofit educational program. It's not necessarily just for students. It's anybody from birth to the end of their life can qualify as long as they're enrolled in an educational program. In order to submit students to the quota, you have to have parent permission. And then the submission is sent to the Assistive Technology and Accessible Education Materials Center for approval. Students must also have an IEP, a 504, or some other written action plan for their education, an I-report, and that's current within the last 3 years. But for the 2022 census, the I-report is waived because it's hard to get kids into the doctors. So we've submitted for approval that. And also the Ohio Dyslexia Guidebook draft was sent out about 3 weeks ago. And the review period, public comment period ended today. I did review the document. I thought it was very informative and I can't wait to see the final product. It includes a lot of great descriptions about what the state is looking for with regards to assessing students, providing interventions and requirements for training with regards to dyslexia that are coming up in the next few years.
Thank you. And last, we have Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Liebert.
Good evening. Mrs. Porcello and I held an informative meeting earlier this evening on ARP IDEA funds that we received from the federal government as part of the American Rescue Plan allocations provided to the State Department of Education. Geneva area schools received $116,148.46 to support IDEA. Excuse me. These funds must be spent during the 2021, 22, and 22, 23 school years. These funds can be used for the same purposes outlined in IDA Part B, allowable expenditures. One such allowable, one such allowable expense is appropriate instructional supplies and materials designed to increase student achievement and outcomes while increasing access to and progress in the general curriculum, which can be an asset to both teaching and learning. In your packets, there are some curricular materials that we plan to purchase for special ed teachers and for our unit teachers as well. These purchases will help close the achievement gap for our students with special needs and provide our teachers with a curriculum that is rooted in the Ohio learning standards. The regular ed teachers in K-5 have the McGraw-Hill Wonders reading curriculum And then the McGraw-Hill WonderWorks reading curriculum is a great supplement for students with disabilities and their teachers that will align to the same standards and help close those gaps. Unique learning system, which will be used in our ID and ED units in grades 6 through 12, will work with the state's extended learning standards in the areas of ELA, math, science, social studies, and transitions. Teach Town Encore will be an ID and autism classrooms in K-5. It is a standards-based curriculum for K-8 students. It uses concepts and applied behavioral analysis to provide students with moderate to severe disabilities access to the general curriculum. As a district, we need to look at dyslexia training, as Mr. Priscilla just talked about. The state is mandating training for certain staff members beginning next year, and we plan to use the remaining money from this fund to train reading and intervention specialists in dyslexia interventions and supports. And finally, to the board members, thank you for your service to our students, families, and community. Thank you.
Thank you. Soaring Eagles. Oh, you want me to read it? Yeah, okay.
Next, we will have a recognition of the first semester Soaring Eagles presentation. The board would like to recognize our Soaring Eagles from the first semester. Since they cannot be here in person, I've created a Google slide deck to showcase them as I read through these. Those students and staff will receive their certificates from your building principal, as I have gotten those to them. And we will be inviting you to attend the May board meeting to hopefully come in person when we celebrate the second semester Soaring Eagles, so that you will have that same opportunity. But I do want to share these, and Mr. Markajon will advance the slides as we go through these. So for the month of October, our Soaring Eagles from Austinburg, we had fifth grade teacher Lisa Nugent, chosen by Principal Mrs. Berzanko. At Cork, we had second grader Silas Kinney, chosen by Mrs. Bowser. And at GPS, we had fourth grader Gabriella Cole, chosen by Mr. Bryan. Also in October at the middle school, we had Lukas Tidwell, chosen by Mrs. Intihar. And at the high school, we had senior Kennedy Landris, chosen by Mrs. Blevins. Moving to November, again, starting back at Austinburg, Mrs. Nappy chose third grader Lukas Powers. At Cork, kindergartner chosen by Mrs. Ellis was Emma Kinney. And at GPS, Mrs. Winchell chose first grader Michaelin Brenneman. At the middle school for November, Mr. Torak chose eighth grader Paxton Galliazzo. And at the high school, Mrs. Monahan chose senior Wyatt Fuderick. And then lastly, for the month of December, at Austinburg, Mrs. Dilworth chose second grader Finn Otero. At Cork Elementary, Mrs. Hall chose fourth grader Hudson Simmons. At GPS, third grader Victoria Asirno was chosen by Mrs. Caraher. At the middle school, seventh grader Natali Morales was chosen by Mrs. Long. And finally, at the high school, chosen by Mr. Balcones was freshman Trenton Para. So congratulations to all of those Soaring Eagles. I know some of those are joining us virtually. So thank you for joining us. And again, we hope to see you in person at the May board meeting.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on, I recommend approval of the insurance renewal proposal from the Ohio School Plan.
Move.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm sure you noticed that the overall premium went up a little over $7,000. The reason for that is the Ohio School Plan does a free property appraisal once every 5 years. They just completed one last year. So they applied the new replacement values for our buildings. Those values went up about 16 million from what we were insured at previously. So while the overall rate increase on our insurance decreased 3.5% for each class of insurance, with that increased property limits to cover, that resulted in the $7,000 increase to our premium.
Anyone else? Okay, roll call, Mr. Lillie?
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
and Mrs. Metzler.
Yes. I recommend approval of a 3-month pilot with Walter Haverfield for a flat fee structure for legal services.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just wanted to comment, I was recommending this for approval to pilot with them to hopefully help our fees with legal services. And the way it works, it could sort of balance out, or we can obtain professional development from them for the use of the hours, but we pay a flat fee for a set amount of hours each month. If we go over that, it's still the flat fee. If we go under that, again, we could add on professional development at that time or be proactive and start to look into other topics and still pay that same flat fee. So it's going to be a 3-month pilot, and then we will reassess to see if that's helpful or not, and then we'll go from there.
Anyone else?
Dr. Treharn, when does the 3 months start?
Well, he knows that it was on the January 19th agenda today. So I think they are willing, if it passes, to start it in January. I will confirm that with them, but obviously not, then certainly come February, but we're hoping, it sounded like they were willing to go back and start it this month.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
and Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
I recommend that the board approve the enclosed proposal from Smolin Engineering Limited to provide estimating and pricing services to prepare preliminary budgets for the construction of a new board office building at the Geneva High School campus.
I'll move.
Second.
Discussion?
Again, I just wanted to comment, this has been reviewed by legal counsel and they are fine with the way the proposal is written. Again, just to highlight, this is to create the budgets for the square footage that they were provided, to look at multiple different locations here in order to give us pricing so that the board has that information and can move forward.
And when do we expect to get any of these estimates from them if we approve this?
So once it's approved and is signed, he was anticipating within 3 months, we should have this information, if not sooner. I would think from speaking with him, it sounded like sooner, but we'll see.
Okay. And I see here, it shows that the offer for the services is open for only 90 days. Did you talk about that at all with him? I mean, to me, does that mean that when they submit this within 3 months, we've only got 90 days to make a decision on that?
No, my interpretation was this offer.
Was only good for the 3 months?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes,
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
and Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
I recommend the following personnel actions for the 2021-2022 school year as amended.
Move.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just wanted to point out for those that are retiring, the years of service that they have given to the district. Obviously, I was not here for all of those years, but I think collectively, the total of years is pretty impressive of their dedication to Geneva. So I thought that was worth pointing out. You'll also see, I'm very happy that there is a school nurse listed here. In fact, she started today. So very happy about that. Also under number 2, substitute, Sandra Vincent, even though it's listed under the substitute teacher category, she is a sub nurse. So very excited that in addition to hiring a full-time nurse, we also have a sub nurse who will be filling in as well. And again, just a thanks to Mrs. Richmond, my secretary, and the administrators for working diligently. You know, we've utilized the flexibility from Senate Bill 1 for the substitutes, and we have gotten a lot of people inquiring recently, which has been good. So I know the principals have started interviewing already. They have a list of probably 8 to 10 more that we got in recently. So we're trying to get them through the process as quickly as possible so that we can start utilizing them. So it's been good.
I also would like to reiterate my thanks to Ms. Colai, Ms. Shemansky, and Ms. Van Allen for their service, and congratulations on the retirement. Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz, and Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
I recommend the hiring of the following personnel for the 2022-2023 school year on a one-year contract.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
and Ms. Fisher.
Yes.
And we move to other. Dr. Treharn.
So again, to circle back around to address a few of the topics from last month's meeting. We did do an MOU with the union for a nurse, but it wasn't for the licensure or type of nurse. The nurse that we did hire has a BSN. It was in order for us to be able to offer her similar years experience versus just school nurse experience. So we could be a little bit more competitive with the wages because we really just cannot compete with the hospitals and what they're paying right now when it comes to wages. So again, I was happy to get her and she already has a BSN, which was great. I also reached out to the bus garage to follow up on the comment that was made about people applying and not getting a phone call back. And I was assured that everyone who applied was contacted in regards if there was interest to becoming a bus driver or sub bus driver. The ink shortage was due to a supply chain problem, I should say. We are trying to get toner from other companies. Our contract is with ComDoc and they are unable to get toner from their suppliers. So Mr. Brigard has found some other companies to get them from, hopefully, and ComDoc is willing to reimburse us for those if we could get them from other vendors. So that was good. Hopefully those will come in. And then I was going to comment as well on Mrs. Porcello, but Ms. Guston already commented on that. So those were the updates from some of the questions. Again, Senate Bill 1 has definitely been a blessing in disguise for us to try and get subs. It is really helped lately. We're really seeing people come in, which is great. Again, if anyone out there listening is interested or has friends, they would just need to contact Mrs. Richmond at the board office. She will explain the next steps and provide the needed paperwork. And then the administrators will start the interview process with them. Highland, so in, the Ohio school plan was listed earlier on the agenda. They are a risk management group that came out last spring. And they made recommendations based on identifying any existing or potential liability and or property exposures. Based off of that recommendation, we are adding 3 additional emergency shut-off switches in the high school wood shop, which was a recommendation of theirs, and plan on using ESSER funds to do so. The identification status, so each year the Ohio Department of Education provides an identification status for the district. Because of testing being canceled the 1 year and being in the midst of the pandemic, new identifications will be made in the fall of 2022 using the data from this school year. So as of now, we retain our district's identification, which is moderate C, which is actually the second highest. The highest would be independent. And it goes all the way down to having a priority focus or warning for schools. So that's just an update on that. Some COVID updates. In case you're not aware, and I received this communication from the Ashtabula County Health Department, the FDA has approved extending the shelf life of the Binax Now home test for an additional 3 months. So now we can use those for 15 months. They are cautioning districts, and I believe Mrs. Drought told me that we had this issue here and we may continue to have it, or maybe some people have experienced it at home, but they're still having still having issues that the Ohio Department of Health is trying to work out when people are taking these kits and they're taking them home and they're trying to log on to have them proctored. They're showing up as expired and they're not, the telehealth person, so to speak, is not, saying that they're good to use. So they are working on resolving that issue. That's well above us to resolve that issue. Again, that would be the ODH, but they have been extended for 3 more months, which is good. Additionally, I tried ordering another 500 tests. They are trying to have districts hold off or order only really what you need. So they did not send us the full 500, but pretty close to it. So we definitely have test kits should students or staff need those. We do have those and have been giving those out quite a bit. Also from the Ashtabula County Health Department, they are moving away. This communication, I should say, is from them, but they that I'm referring to is the CDC and the Ohio Department of Health is moving away from the term fully vaccinated. And now they're using the wording up to date on vaccinations due to the timeframes from when they started and the availability of the boosters. That will be the new verbiage that they are using. Just a comment also, and this kind of goes back to some of the correspondence of regarding remote or being in person rather. Our data is certainly showing that the highest case spikes have come after the holidays when kids have been home, and schools is not where the virus is spreading. So there was an article that was shared with me from the Washington Post, and I just wanted to share one short snippet of it. It says one reason is that closing schools for in-person learning doesn't automatically mean a perfect lockdown. People continue to mix and socialize, and most transmission occurs at home and in social settings amongst family and friends when people let their guard down. Schools, compared where other places that people gather, are relatively controlled environments where mitigation measures can be implemented and monitored. Certainly, the article goes on to comment that they did not feel that remote learning had worked in the past when everyone was shut down. I can say we are certainly seeing, as I know I've commented on in the past, the academic, social, behavior, and mental effects of that now. So again, my goal is certainly to keep kids in person learning, hopefully for the rest of the school year. January 21st, we are having an in-service day for staff. So this Friday, teachers will be engaging in professional development, as I believe Mr. Riley commented on. Some of our administrators certainly will be presenting on Friday, and teachers will get professional development in the areas of tech integration, rigorous assessments, special education, OTES 2.0, which is the new teacher evaluation system, and the Ohio improvement process. I know I typically report on our Soaring Eagles each month, but because of the holiday on Monday and the snow day yesterday, I have not made it around to all of the buildings yet. So I didn't just want to announce some for January. So next month at the meeting, I will announce both the January and February Soaring Eagles. And then lastly, just to give another update on ESSER. I know I addressed at the last board meeting that the 4 areas that we were targeting our first round of funding on were academic, safety, tech integration, and professional development. I just wanted to give another update on some of those purchases. So I mentioned the 3 emergency shut-off switches at the high school. We will be having some tech integration, professional development, not only Friday, but hopefully a continuation of that in the months of February and April, bringing some consultants in to work with our staff. We have already ordered the interactive boards for grades 3 through 5 and special education. Previously, they had Clever Touches, and because of availability, we went with New Line. And those are supposed to be coming in tomorrow or Friday. So that will be good. We are still exploring options for 612, but we are definitely narrowing that down. You heard Mr. Liebert and Mrs. Porcello talk about some of the curriculum for special education that we will be purchasing. So that is coming out of here. We'll be ordering fusion science kits, which I know some of the elementary teachers certainly expressed wanting those. We purchased some radios at the high school that we're still waiting to come in. And we are looking to get, we're still waiting on a quote, but we are looking to improve the ventilation in the middle school shop as well, as that was something that the teachers brought up at our ESSER meetings also. So I just want to provide an update on some of the other items that we will be using ESSER funds for, just so everyone's aware. That's all for my report.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything for other? Okay, I just want to update you on my visits from November and December. I was able to meet with Mrs. Jones in food service at the end of November. And kind of like a follow-up, I met with her the last school year. And at that time, at the end of November, she was fully staffed in food service, which I was happy to hear, but they were still having difficulty finding subs like all of the other areas of our schools. She mentioned that they were not wrapping fruit anymore and putting things in its own little individual wrapping or containers, which they had to do last year because of COVID. So that is helping to save some money in the food service area. They were able to get an extra helper at GPS with ESSER money. So that was actually something that she was very happy with, and it's working out well for her there. One of the biggest problems besides having no subs is the supply chain issues, getting food and anything else that the food service area needs. And so we talked a little bit about that, about finding other sources of the items that she needs, and she has been doing that along the way. The costs are higher, but we can offset those costs with ESSER money. That is a qualifying expense. And at that time, since it was November, she talked to me about Santa coming and the lucky tray, which, you know, we've heard about and we've seen in the papers. They were able to do that again this year. And then I met with our new director of transportation, Mr. Rome, in December, and Charlotte Leonard. And I kind of met with Mr. Rome just to kind of introduce myself, get to know him a little bit. He's a very happy, positive man, and he's really bringing that energy to the bus garage. And I think, you know, his goal is to make people feel good and want to come to work. And I would say that his attitude and positivity, you know, it moves on to all of the people in the area. And I think that he's seeing that. I think when I talked to Mrs. Leonard, she's seeing that. So there's been a lot of improvement there with just the overall feeling of a team atmosphere at the bus garage. He mentioned that at that point, because he's relatively new, he's been a little more reactive than proactive in his position, but that he expects to become a little more proactive and be on top of things more before they happen instead of after they happen going forward. We have 29 buses and 6 vehicles. He said we're using about half of those buses at this point. So we talked a little bit about that, and he's really getting a firm grip on what's going on in that garage. And then when I talked with Mrs. Leonard, we added 2 extra hours to her day. We approved that as a board, and she said that's helping tremendously, although there's still plenty of work for her to do even beyond that extra 2 hours. I asked her about the amount of routes that we had, because, you know, we hear frequently about buses having to double up on their riders and not having enough drivers, and she said, right now we have 17 routes plus St. John and ATAC, but we've got 16 drivers. And so if any of those drivers are out, for example, on the day that I visited her, she only had 12 drivers. So therein lies the problem where you're seeing buses having to double up and cover routes because she's got 17 routes and 12 drivers. So I also asked her, about what we heard about people not getting phone calls back and from the applicants not getting phone calls. And she assured me as well that everybody that's applying is hearing back from her. And at that time, she had 2 people going through classes and 2 people that were going to be starting class the following week. So we had 4 drivers kind of in the pipeline to get started with us. And that process can be lengthy. But the fact that we had 4 people kind of in line for that was encouraging. She said that things are really changing at the bus garage. She's really happy with the drivers are happy with it. The buses are being repaired in a timely manner. She likes that she's able to use Facebook to post about the changes. She thinks that that's been a positive change in terms of communicating with the public. The phone calls have tapered lately. Mr. Rome said the same thing, that the phone calls have tapered. So it was all very encouraging news from the bus garage. And next month, I will be reporting on my visit with Mrs. Porcello. I've met with her last week, and I will be talking about the special ed and what I learned there. Anyone else? Okay. We're moving on to the second hearing of the public. Is there anyone that would like to speak? I think Mr. Markajon asked last time in the chat if anyone liked to speak. If somebody wants to speak, you can let him know through the chat. You're not seeing anybody, Mr. Markajon? Okay. Well, I will take it that there is not anybody that would like to speak. At this time, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
and Mrs. Metzler.
Yes. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Those online, thank you, and we will see you next month.